Wheel of Time community, and welcome to the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru. I'm Teresa.
And I'm Tim.
And together, we're going to walk through Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time book series. How you doing, Tim?
Doing good. How about you?
Okay, California's still on fire.
Yeah.
So the air quality isn't great. But, just keep it on.
You don't love the smell of burning ash in the morning?
Not so much, no.
Yeah, well, yeah. But at least we're not in any danger, so, yeah.
Yeah, that's the important part. The air quality isn't fun to deal with, but it certainly could be a lot worse.
Yes, it could.
So, anyway, before we get started, we just want to remind you that this is a reread. We assume that you've read the entire series, so there will be spoilers. You have been warned. All right, Tim, what are we going to be doing in today's episode?
Today we'll be discussing chapters 24, 25, and 26 of the Dragon Reborn, where Matt kicks ass and the girls discover more about the Black Ajah fugitives. Chapter 24 is called Scouting and Discoveries, and the icon is Matt's dice.
Here's a quick summary to act as a reminder for those of you who are not reading along with us. Matt has not been able to suss out a way of escaping Tarvalon, but he is determined to figure it out. He begrudgingly has to admit that he is looking better, and he eats the heaping trays of food that are brought to him. He grabs his dice cup and goes out to scout away out of the city. Matt asks some guardsmen about the conditions across the river, and the guard lets him know that Aes Sedai personally spoke to all the bridge guard, drilling Matt's description until they all could easily recognize him, and making it clear that he is not to leave the city. He walks away, trying to see if there is a way out that's not guarded, and runs into a novice he recognizes as Elsie Grinwell. He tries to talk to her, but she is definitely not as friendly as he remembered. She doesn't seem to want him anywhere near her, demanding that he let her by and turning several times to make sure he did not follow. He makes his way over to the warder's practice yards. He needs a rest, so he sits under a tree, mindlessly juggling some rocks, and watches the students train. He notices that a crowd of women show particular interest in one pair of students, both of whom look like they know what they're doing with their swords. Matt realizes that the pair must be Galad and Gawain after hearing Elaine talk about them incessantly. When the boys take a break in their training, they notice Matt and go over to see him. They chat briefly, talk turns to swords, and Matt ends up betting that he can beat both of them at once. Their swords versus his quarterstaff. The Andor boys think Matt is boastful and crazy and won't accept the bet, but their teacher, Hamar, steps in and takes the bet for them. Matt's knees chose that moment to buckle, but he needs to win. So, praying that luck will be with him, he chooses out a quarterstaff and faces off against Galad and Gawain. Matt kicks their ass 5 ways from Sunday, and Hamar teaches his students not to underestimate a farmer with a quarterstaff.
I find it kind of endearing that Matt still thinks of Nynaeve as the wisdom. It's been a long time since they've been back home, and he has been through some pretty huge adventures where he fought side by side with both Egwene and Nynaeve. Typically, when people spend that much time in these kind of situations, the formality of titles starts to fade away. But Matt still thinks of Nynaeve as his wisdom, and that is kind of cool.
Yeah. I love how Matt's trying so hard to be nonchalant and not make an impression on any of the guards, but ends up so awkward that half the barracks are going to know who he is and that he's not supposed to leave the city.
Yeah.
He tries to be so smooth and it just blows up in his face.
All over the place. Yeah.
Elsie Grinwell. I don't think we know yet in the story that this is Lanfear. It takes a few more chapters before that's revealed, if memory serves.
Yeah.
But what caught my eye this time is that she doesn't want Matt to come anywhere near her. When he gets close to her, she steps back, keeping her distance. She demands that he let her by, even though the path is wide and there's no need for him to step aside. And so he chalks it up to her thinking that his sickness is catching. But I'm wondering if she doesn't want him to touch her because it would disturb the Mask of Mirrors. I don't remember if that's an established weakness at the Weave, because I can't see how Lanfear was able to pose as Kylie in The Shadow Rising without being touched.
Right.
But I can't really see any other reason why she'd be so adverse to Matt coming near her, you know? Like, what do you think?
You know, I think you're onto something here. Like, maybe, yeah, I don't know. It could be.
You think, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, we might be in one of those situations where this is the beginning, and I know
book magic.
we keep coming back to that, and I feel like we're a bit of a broken record there. But you're right. Like, later on, there's no way she'd be able to hide as Kaylee in The Shadow Rising with this. Maybe it's a different weave that she uses there. Maybe,
but I would assume it's the same because she's masking herself as someone else.
True.
I don't know. I just thought it was really interesting how averse she is to him even approaching her. Like, as if he touched her, everything would come apart. Like, it didn't make any sense. But I just thought it was interesting.
I agree. It is interesting. I don't know how to explain it. I like how Matt tries so hard to convince himself that he is fine when he obviously is not. He really wants to leave. He knows he can't, but he's not willing to admit it, even to himself.
Yeah, he keeps trying to convince everyone that he's right as rain and ready to go, but no, he's not doing so great.
And his stomach growls, the most inopportune moment, or
well, everyone keeps telling him, "You look like you've been sick. Do you need to lay down?"
It's like, I'm fine.
So, all anyone really cares about with this chapter is the fight. So let's just move on to that.
Okay, yeah, let's get to the meat.
The Andor boys are so arrogant, and Matt has never been a fan of nobles, so they instantly get under his skin.
True.
They are so sure of themselves and so dismissive of Matt that he can't help himself.
Yeah.
You know? Like, maybe if he wasn't having such a lousy day, he wouldn't have challenged them. But as it is, he has an almost compulsive need to put them in their place. And Hamar is Matt's kind of guy. You know, like, he chooses to teach them a lesson by letting them humiliate themselves.
Yep.
He practically goads them into it, saying, "You think you two are good enough with your swords to take a boy with a stick?" I mean, what are they supposed to do, you know?
Yeah.
I think Hamar gets just as much pleasure seeing them get their asses kicked as Matt did.
Probably. After the healing, Matt accidentally speaks in the old tongue a lot more. Mm-hmm. It's always good for a laugh, though, because it does not just weird him out, but the people around him who hear him get weirded out, too.
You may have noticed that my summary was pretty short for this chapter. That's because I'm just going to read the whole fight scene. This is just too good.
Yeah.
Okay. The moment's warning was all Matt needed. As Galad rushed at him, he slid his hands along the quarterstaff and pivoted. The end of the staff thudded into the tall man's ribs, bringing a grunt and a stumble. Matt let the staff bounce off Galad and spun, carrying it on around just as Gowan came within range. The staff darted under Gowan's practice sword and clipped his ankle out from under him. As Gowan fell, Matt completed the spin in time to catch Galad across his upraised wrist, sending his practice sword flying. As if his wrist did not pain him at all, Galad threw himself into a smooth rolling dive and came up with his sword in both hands. Ignoring him for the moment, Matt half-turned, twisting his wrist to whip the length of the staff back beside him. Gowan, just starting to rise, took the blow on the side of the head with a loud thump, only partly softened by the patting of hair. He went down in a heap. Matt was only vaguely aware of an Aes Sedai rushing out to tend Elaine's fallen brother. "I hope he's all right. He should be. I've hit myself harder than that falling off a fence." He still had Galad to deal with, and from the way Galad was poised on the balls of his feet, sword raised precisely, he had begun to take Matt seriously. Matt's legs chose that moment to tremble. Light, I can't weaken now. But he could feel it creeping back in, the wobbly feeling, the hunger, as if he had not eaten for days. If I wait for him to come to me, I'll fall on my face. It was hard to keep his knees straight as he started forward. Luck, stay with me. From the first blow, he knew that luck or skill or whatever had brought him this far was still there. Galad managed to turn that one with a sharp clack, and the next, and the next, and the next. But strain stiffened his face. That smooth swordsman, almost as good as the warders, fought with every ounce of his skill to keep Matt's staff from him. He did not attack. It was all he could do to defend. He moved continually to the side, trying not to be forced back, and Matt pressed him, staff a blur. And Galad stepped back again, wooden blade, a thin shield against the quarterstaff. Hunger gnawed at Matt as if he had swallowed weasels. Sweat rolled down into his eyes, and his strength began to fade as if it leached out with the sweat. Not yet. I can't fall yet. I have to win. Now! With a roar, he threw all his reserve into one last surge. The quarterstaff flickered past Galad's sword and, in quick succession, struck knee, wrist, and ribs, and finally thrust into Galad's stomach like a spear. With a groan, Galad folded over, fighting not to fall. The staff quivered in Matt's hands on the point of a final crushing thrust to the throat. Galad sank to the ground. Matt almost dropped the quarterstaff when he realized what he'd been about to do. Win, not kill. Light, what was I thinking? Reflexively, he grounded the butt of the staff, and as soon as he did, he had to clutch at it to hold himself erect. Hunger hollowed him like a knife reaming marrow from the bone. Suddenly, he realized that not only the Aes Sedai and Accepted were watching. All practice, all learning had stopped. Warders and students alike stood watching him. Hamar moved to stand beside Galad, still groaning on the ground and trying to push himself up. The warder raised his voice to shout, "Who is the greatest blade master of all time?" From the throats of dozens of students came a massed bellow. "Jerome Gaiden!" "Yes!" Hamar shouted, turning to make sure all heard. During his lifetime, Jerome fought over 10,000 times in battle and single combat. He was defeated once by a farmer with a quarterstaff. Remember that. Remember what you just saw. It's just so good.
It's awesome. It's great.
Yeah, I don't love all the fighting and stuff, all the fight scenes that we get in the Wheel of Time, but this one is really, really fun.
Yeah, it really is. This scene is a huge favorite among all Wheel of Time fans. Mm-hmm. And for good reason. Matt hasn't recovered from his healing yet, and he beats the two well-trained swordsmen. But it's so much more than that. He puts the high and mighty, arrogant popular kids in their place, in front of an audience of their admirers, and with the blessing of their teacher. Hamar even reinforces the lesson with all the students watching. Then he pays Matt for Galad's part of the bet, so Matt doesn't have to deal with the fallout of trying to collect it around all the angry women Aes Sedai. This is teenage angst wish fulfillment at its best. As a side note, it's cool to see Gawain go down right away because he sucks.
He does suck.
yeah, I could go on, but this is just Matt being a big damn hero.
Yeah, it's a really, really fun scene. And pretty much the only important part of this chapter.
True, absolutely. Chapter 25 is called Questions, and we see Lanfear's Moon and Stars icon.
The three Supergirls are in Nynaeve's room looking over the information Varen gave them about the Black Sisters and trying to come up with a plan. Elaine is carefully poring over every detail, and Nynaeve is pacing. Egwene's mind wanders to disturbing dreams she's been having. She's sure the dreams mean something, especially the ones about Rand, Matt, and Perrin. The girls argue about how useful the information actually is, and Elaine shows herself to be quite the sleuth and deduces that there are still Black Ajah sisters in the tower. Most of the ter'angreal taken have something to do with sleep and dreaming, except for a rod that produces balefire that is very dangerous and nearly impossible to control. File that one away for later. They wonder if Varen was too wrapped up in her own thoughts to have noticed all the dream ter'angreal, or if she knew Egwene would immediately see the connection and whether or not that means she's black. They discuss all the Aes Sedai we know by name, debating whether or not they're black, and come up with more questions than answers. Since it's the only connection they can come up with, they decide that Egwene will use the dream ring and enter the world of dreams that night. They're interrupted by Elsie Grinwell with a message from the Amerlin. saying that all of the belongings left by Leandrin and the others are in a basement storeroom. She leaves, and the girls cannot believe that Swan would trust anyone as foolish as Elsie. Egwene runs after her, but she only catches a glimpse of White vanishing down the nearest ramp. Egwene gives chase and spots the flash of White already disappearing down another ramp. She runs into a beautiful woman in silver and white, and suddenly Egwene starts to have major self-esteem issues. Egwene asks if the woman has seen Elsie. She responds that the girl was running fast and Egwene won't catch her. She tells Egwene that she's taken up too much of her time with her and commands her to leave. Egwene turned and was 3 steps up the ramp before she realized what she was doing. Bristling, she turns back, but the woman is gone. Egwene looks around, but there was no woman in silver and white anywhere.
Right off the bat, we read about a number of dreams Egwene has, and all of them come true. The Seanchan do attack the tower with captured Aes Sedai made to fight for them. The White Cloaks do show up in the 2 rivers and take some of her village people prisoner. Rand and Kalendor, his dragon tattoos, and other images Egwene sees about the boys all come to pass. Mm-hmm. So much of this was planned out from the beginning of the series, at least in outline form. It's just really impressive when you are rereading, but if I'm being completely honest, the first time through, it was a lot for me to absorb and impossible to keep track of it all. Now it's almost a walk down memory lane. What about you?
Yeah, there's a ton of information here. She mentions Perrin's falcon and hawk, and him leading a huge pack of wolves, Mat hanging from a tree, and him putting his eye on a balancing scale.
Yeah.
Like, this whole section talking about Egwene's dreams is like Min's visions all over again. Now with more detail, you know? Like, it was a lot all at once.
Yeah. Props to Elaine for deducing that there are still members of the Black Ajah in the tower. Mm-hmm. We've read scenes with the Forsaken, so we probably could have figured this out ourselves without her going through all of this, but these 3 couldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Elaine hasn't come across as the smartest person in the world so far in this series, so it's nice to see her using her brain and contributing in big ways.
Yeah, definitely.
What I like about how this plays out here is that I feel this is more about showing how Elaine copes with stress than about revealing information to the reader. Elaine, as a princess training to take over as queen one day, is looking at only cold hard facts that have been put in front of them. This eliminates other things that can make the task seem overwhelming, and it does lead to information that the others completely missed.
Okay.
Also, more props to Elaine for letting Nynaeve and Egwene work out their stress in their own way. Yes, Nynaeve should not have snapped at Elaine, and Egwene should grow up a bit and not act so childish. But Elaine just keeps studying the papers and focusing on the task. I like to think that she's allowing the other 2 to work through their fears by not engaging them as they act out. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Elaine is actually pretty good at being a mediary between the 2. And she's also really good at meeting people where they are.
Yes.
So she has a good relationship with Egwene, and she ends up having a really good relationship with Nynaeve. And it's because she's able to handle the different ways they both act out really well.
Yeah.
Like when Nynaeve snaps at her and says, you know, be quiet, child, or something like that, Elaine, unlike Egwene, doesn't come back at her saying, I'm not a child, I'm unaccepted just like you are, or any of the stuff that Egwene has said. All she does is wiggle her fingers that has the Great Serpent ring on it at Nynaeve and kind of gives her a pointed look. She doesn't say anything. That's all that's necessary. And Nynaeve's, oh, crap. Yeah, okay, sorry. You know, like, so Elaine is really, really good at navigating these situations.
I agree.
It's definitely her training in the royal court, because a queen has to be able to deal with crappy-ass people in whatever mood they are. And if they're powerful people, it's not like she can go snapping at them.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like, she has to use diplomacy. And Elaine is actually very, very diplomatic.
Yeah.
I love the little part about Varen where Elaine says, I saw her walking in the rain once, soaking wet, and took a cloak to her. She was so wrapped up in whatever she was thinking. I did not believe she knew it was raining until I put the cloak around her shoulders.
Favorite line for this chapter. Sometimes I think Varen notices more than she lets on. Yes, she does.
Can confirm.
I do want to call back to a previous episode where we talked about Varen possibly getting visits from someone before Egwene arrived at her study. Mm-hmm. Like the same description appears here for Elsa running away that we get when Egwene comes to the door at Varen's study. Quote, "The flash of white was already disappearing down another ramp." Unquote. It's not exactly the same, but it's really similar. So I think that Lanfear was visiting Varen.
It's definitely possible. If not visiting Varen, then eavesdropping or spying on Varen.
Right. She was definitely around, and that's every time we see this little like white dress of someone running around a corner, I'm fairly certain that's Lanfear when we're in the tower.
Yeah. It sounds like Lanfear was using a little bit of compulsion on Egwene.
Yeah.
Here at the end. Immediately, Egwene feels small and unclean, thinking that the woman can channel more of the power than she can, which is crazy because she's super, super crazy powerful.
Right.
And is smarter than all three of them put together. And it's not like Egwene to have such a crisis of low self-esteem, I mean, we've actually complained a lot about how full of herself Egwene usually is.
True.
Even if Lanfear is the most beautiful woman on the planet, it's still completely out of character for Egwene to doubt herself like this. I think Lanfear has to be putting a mojo on Egwene, right?
Absolutely.
Like when she commands her to leave, Egwene immediately obeys, even though bowing to authority is her sore spot for this book. It just all screams compulsion to me.
Yeah, it's funny when I read this scene, sometimes I flash to that scene in Harry Potter where they're learning the unforgivable curses, and Harry's like thinking as he's resisting, and he's like, "Why am I going to do this?" Like it's like Egwene has that moment of she takes 3 steps and is like, "What am I doing?" Yeah. So I kind of flash.
So
to that.
it's not compulsion. Lanfear imperious Egwene.
There you go. There isn't much to say about this chapter, and unfortunately, we're gearing up for constant bickering that we will have to endure for the rest of this book.
Not a fan.
I can't wait for the girls to grow up a little bit. Mm-hmm. This chapter reminds me of poorly written YA, with the way Nynaeve and Egwene are totally being catty with each other. Things get better starting in the next book, but it's a pain to get there.
For sure.
Moving right along, chapter 26 is called Behind a Lock, and the icon is the 2 faces.
The Supergirls go inspect the basement, and all arrows point to Tyr. The end. Sorry, guys, there wasn't really anything to summarize in this chapter. That's it. That's all that happens.
Yeah. The way Jordan keeps subtly hinting that the tower used to house many more people than it does now always makes me feel a sense of how much has truly been lost from the Age of Legends. Like the tower itself is diminished, and Egwene is faced with the physical reminders of that fact every day. It's no wonder that she changes the rules later so that any woman, regardless of age, can put her name in the Book of Novices. I think she really takes this to heart in the little bit of time that she physically spends at the tower before coming Armelin.
Yeah, definitely. Also, could you say that it's subtle hinting if he mentions it outright so many times?
Well, some of us, subtlety hits people at different phases. For some of us, it goes between the eyes like a 2x4. Others, not so much.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
No, that never happens here. Nope. It's a really human thing to try to explain what we do not understand, and to do that based on things that we do understand, which is why the girls come to the wrong conclusion about Lanfear here. But still, if they did not trust her, or if they suspected something was up with her in any way, then why did they go looking for the storeroom that she directed them to?
Well, I think it's because they don't have any other clues. The Elsie thing is fishy, but they don't know about the Mask of Mirrors yet, so they have no reason to be suspicious that the person they talked to wasn't Elsie Grinwell. And while they think Elsie's a fool, a lead is a lead.
True. Yeah, I'm being too hard on them.
Little bit.
A lead is a lead. I just there's just so many heebie-jeebies right now.
Yeah, I mean, you can spend chapter after chapter after chapter saying we don't trust anybody and anyone could be the Black Ajah and paranoia, and all of a sudden, well, this is obviously suspicious, but let's do it anyway. So I get what you're saying. Jordan was playing a little fast and loose with what he was doing, but, and then he needed to progress the plot somehow.
True. Even if the one person you do end up trusting is, Lanfear in disguise. But yeah.
Yeah.
The moment that Egwene realizes she can channel 2 weaves at the same time is kind of cool. She and Elaine both discover new tricks with the power. They're definitely leveling up in this book.
Which is good, because, they need to do more than just juggle balls of light. It's time to go start kicking ass out in the real world.
Yeah, and do some more subtle things other than just blow stuff up with lightning and earth.
Yeah, I mean, say what you will about the Shan-Chen, but Egwene learned a lot while she was being kept as a slave.
She sure did.
It doesn't make it worth it, but she did learn a lot.
Yeah.
Nynaeve works herself up over the locked door, and Egwene tells her to calm herself, that there's no need to throw a tantrum. Nynaeve responds that she does not want to be calm. She wants to be furious. Because of Nynaeve's block, she can only channel when she's angry. And this is the first instance of her purposefully working herself up so she'll get angry enough to channel.
Mm-hmm.
It takes Egwene and Elaine a while to cotton on to what she's doing, and it causes some tension when they feel that Nynaeve is just being moody. But when they do figure it out, they realize it's a good thing when Nynaeve is angry.
I actually like angry Nynaeve. It's good to make her angry.
She's surly, but in a good way. I love when Nynaeve uses the pry bar on the lock. She heaves with all her might and goes flying when the chain snaps like a thread. And Egwene's like, oh, I may have done something to the chain. And Nynaeve's like, oh, you think so, do you? Yeah, I may have noticed that. Next time, say something. That would be helpful.
Just a bit, yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's really funny that she goes launched across the room.
Yeah. There's something in every bag that they go through that indicates tear. The girls are learning, though. This time, they're able to spot the obvious trap for what it is.
It's insulting how obvious this trap is. Egwene does not want to believe that the Black Ajah could be that sure of themselves, but they really must think that the girls are idiots to be laying it on this thick. It's just insulting.
Well, wait, so why is that insulting?
It's insulting because they're not even bothering to try to cover it up. Lanfear set all this up. Leandrin and her cronies didn't actually do it. Leandrin set all this up, and she thinks so little of the girls that she's not even trying to be sneaky. She's not putting any effort into it whatsoever. She's so disdainful of the girls. She gives them no credit for any sort of talent or intelligence or anything. So she's basically setting up so even a 4-year-old would be able to fall
figure
into
this out.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like she's not even bothering to cover it up because she couldn't be bothered. She doesn't care because they're not worthy of her care.
Got it.
That's why it's insulting. It's and it's going to bite her in the ass when they come back later. All of the Black Ajah sisters and all of the Forsaken, all of them underestimate these girls. And then they show up, they kick ass and take names, and it's like...
What happened?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for walking through that.
Uh-huh.
That's it for chapters 24, 25, and 26 of The Dragon Reborn. Join us next week to discuss chapters 27 and 28, where Egwene takes her first foray into the world of dreams, and Matt may have found his ticket out of Tar Valon.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Wheel of Time Pod-Thru.
We'll see you again next week. Make sure you rate and subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts or wherever your favorite podcatcher might be. If you could leave us a positive review, it would really help us out. It makes us more visible so more people can find us. You can tweet us at Pod-Thru or email us at whatpodthru@gmail.com and tell us your thoughts on anything we covered today.
That's WOTPODTHRU@gmail.com, or find our Wheel of Time Pod-Thru channel on YouTube. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, do the things. Oh, and we're on Pandora now.
Yes, we are, just this week.
Yeah, that's new, so yay. Thanks, everybody, and we hope the wheel weaves you in our direction again soon.